I can still picture the exact moment she said those words. Not tonight or any other night. The tone of her voice made me feel cold. We had been married for 6 years, and while things hadn't been great lately, I never thought she would say something so clear about our relationship. The night had begun like any other. When I got home from work, we had dinner and talked about unimportant things. After dinner, we went to the living room, where she looked at her phone while I watched TV. She used to smile when I kissed her neck, but she quickly pulled away when I did it. She said, "Don't," and she didn't even look up from her screen. "I'm not in the mood." I tried not to sound angry when I responded, "You haven't been in the mood for weeks now. Is everything okay?" At that moment, she put down her phone, looked me straight in the eyes, and said those terrible words. "Not tonight or any other night. We are no longer together in that way." I kept thinking of what I could say, but I couldn't say anything. What should you do when the sexual closeness in your marriage ends all of a sudden? No explanation, no chance to talk about it, just a choice made by one person that affected both of us. "What do you really mean?" I finally asked, hoping that I had got it wrong. "Just what I said. This has been on my mind for a while." She went on, and the calmness of her voice was scary. "I'm happy with our stable life together, including the house, our friends, and our relationship, but I'm no longer interested in being physically close to you. You can choose to accept it or not." My mind went back to the past as she talked. The intense beginnings of our relationship, how it has slowly cooled over the past year, how she avoids touching me more and more lately. I had seen all the warning signs but ignored them because I was busy and thought things would get better on their own. "Is there someone else?" I asked, then felt bad about asking such a common question. She laughed out loud at that. "Not at all. I'm no longer interested in that kind of people. This has nothing to do with you, I've moved on from that time in my life." It almost hurt more. I could have called her the bad guy in our story if there had been someone else. But this? How can you fight someone who just doesn't want you anymore? The days after that were a strange nowhere. Even though this imaginary wall was there between us, we kept living together, eating together, and even watching TV together. She acted like her announcement was nothing more than a change in what groceries she liked, not the most important thing that would happen in our marriage. I tried to bring up therapy. "We only need to be together." She replied in a rude way. "There is nothing wrong with me, and no one will force me to be intimate if I don't want to be." Of course, she was right that no one should be pushed. But because they wouldn't even talk about the sudden change, I felt like I was living with a stranger whose face was that of my wife. At night, when I was lying on my side of our now functional bed, I looked up at the sky and wondered how I could have missed the slow loss of our connection. Did I get so caught up in my work that I didn't notice her moving away? Or had she kept her thoughts to herself until she lost it? One thing became more and more clear. I was now married to someone who didn't want or need me in any serious way. I was just handy, I helped pay the bills, went to couple-friendly events with them, and kept up the appearance of our marriage's success around the house. 2 weeks after she said it, I was sitting in my car outside our house, unable to find the strength to go inside. What did they have ready for me? After another evening of getting along with someone who had changed the rules of our relationship without telling me, I knew I had to make a decision. I could keep living in this mental desert and wait for rain that would never come, or I could put my time, attention, and resources into something or someone that would help me grow. I had already thought of a plan when I finally walked through our front door. Not a plan for revenge or a big fight, but something stronger, a total change in the way my life works. There's a chance I could move on from her without going if she did it. When I woke up the next morning, I was even more determined to find out what had gone wrong in our relationship. There might have been still something that could be saved. 6 years of history together couldn't just disappear in an instant. "May I talk?" I asked her as she carefully spread avocado on her toast for breakfast, just like every other day. No need to look up, she said, we're talking right now. I mean talk. About us. About what you said. I worked hard to keep my voice calm. I believe that we owe each other at least one honest talk. After letting out a sigh, she slowly put down her knife. We have nothing else to talk about. I've been clear about how I feel. You haven't said why, though. Did I do something wrong? Something I didn't do? People don't just decide one day to change everything about their marriage for no reason. I didn't just wake up and decide this, she said, her cool exterior finally giving way to anger. This is how I've felt for months. You might have seen if you had paid more attention. That hurt because it was true. To get a raise, I had been working longer hours and taking on more work. I did it for us, though. In case we need it. That's what I told myself, anyway. Let's work on it together. I told you. Help for couples. Nights out with a date. It doesn't matter what. Tell me what you need. She looked at me in a way that seemed like sadness. What I need is for you to agree with my choice. I don't want to fix anything because I don't think it's broken. This is all I want right now. What about what I want? The words were not meant to be so harsh. She replied in a cool voice, you can want whatever you want. I won't lie or force myself to stay in a relationship I don't want, though. It was like negotiating with a wall, the talk didn't go anywhere. I still made an appointment with a marriage counselor the following week, thinking that she would change her mind if a professional was there. She told me straight out, I'm not going. Go to treatment by yourself if you need to work through this. I did that. A kind-eyed woman in her 50s was our therapy. She listened as I told her about our situation. She asked, has your wife been through any bad things or big changes in her life lately? I said there was nothing clear. Her job is safe. There were no deaths in the family. I don't know of any health problems. These choices are sometimes caused by unresolved trauma or changes in the mind. Since she's not here, all I can do is help you figure out how to handle the problem. That's when it hit me hard. As I worked to fix what was broken in our marriage, I was by myself. My wife had already moved on mentally, and the only reason she stayed was because our shared life was comfortable and easy. Things got more and more strange at home. We still ate dinner together and sometimes went out with people who didn't know what was going on. From the outside, it looked like we were a normal couple. But they didn't touch, kiss, or even just brush elbows with each other like long-term partners do when they walk down the hall. I also started to notice other things. She no longer started talks. She asked me about my day without much thought, and her answers to mine were also short. She had built a life that was similar to mine under the same roof. One where I was just background noise, a neighbor instead of a husband. When a friend told us one night that they thought we were a great pair, I almost laughed out loud at how silly it was. That's it. We were ghosts living through each other's lives and keeping up a carefully made fantasy. That night, when I was wide awake at 2 a.m., I had to face some painful facts. I was holding on to something that didn't exist anymore. The woman who had looked at me with love and desire before she fell asleep next to me wasn't the same person. Or maybe she was, and the only thing that had changed was how she felt. More importantly, I realized I was letting her decision alone decide how much I valued myself. I lost respect for myself every day that I waited for things to change, but they never did. After 3 months of living this new life, I saw her getting ready for a night out with her friends. She carefully put on my makeup, which is something she hadn't done for me in a long time. I said, "You look nice," just to see what would happen. Her answer was, "Thanks," and she didn't even look at me. That simple conversation made everything clear. In all the ways that counted, she could no longer see me. While she went out for the night, I sat in our living room by myself and thought about what I could do. I could keep living this half-life, getting by on small bits of basic human contact. I could leave, adding to the cozy home we had made. I could also find another way. At first, the idea came to me slowly. It wasn't so much a plan as an urge to stay alive. If she could take her emotional focus off of me while keeping up with our normal lives, I might be able to do the same. Not out of anger or to get back at them, but because they had to in order to stay alive. I got up before her the next morning and felt something like hope for the first time in months. Not to get her back, but to get myself back, I would change how I spent my time, attention, and resources. Small changes were the start of my new path. My alarm went off at 5:30, which was an hour before she would wake up. Those peaceful morning hours quickly became holy to me, they were my own time. I began by meditating for 20 minutes, which is something I had always thought was too hard for me to do with my busy life. To my surprise, that short time of silence in the morning helped me stop thinking about how my marriage was falling apart all the time. After that, we did some simple exercises like push-ups, sit-ups, and a short run around our neighborhood. When she came out of our bedroom, I had already showered, dressed, and set out on a good morning. On the third day, she said, "You're up early." I was drinking coffee and reading at the kitchen table. I answered in a casual way, just making some changes, without giving any more information. She did not ask for one. I joined a gym near my job the second week. I worked out for an hour instead of running home from work to a place that was getting more and more uncomfortable. The hard work turned into a form of therapy. With each rep, it seemed like another piece of anger and self-pity came out. I also got back in touch with old friends I had forgotten about while I was married. Just normal lunches and drinks after work, nothing too exciting. I was careful not to talk about my marriage. These meetings weren't meant to get pity or say bad things about my wife. They were about getting back in touch with people and had nothing to do with who I am as a husband. At home, I kept up appearances while mentally pulling away. I listened politely when she talked, but I didn't hold on to every word. I stopped going around and around her when she was busy with her own things, looking for bits of attention. I spent my time instead reading books I'd always wanted to and taking online classes I'd put off before. After a month of changing my direction, I saw the first changes in my body when I looked in the mirror. My body was changing shape because I worked out every day. My posture had gotten better, and the stress that had been building up in my shoulders for months had gone away. But the most important change was in the way I looked. They looked alert and alive in a way they hadn't since she spoke. Next, I changed my clothes. There was nothing flashy or desperate about my clothes, they were just well fitted and showed that I was proud of my body. A lot of people told me I looked great when I wore a new shirt to dinner with friends. My wife saw it too, but she didn't say anything about it. I saw her looking at me with a small frown one morning as I got ready for work. It looked like she was trying to make peace between the man in front of her and the one she had thrown out. They also changed how my money was handled. Along with our joint account for living costs, we had always kept separate accounts. I kept paying my fair share of our joint debts, but I changed how I spent my extra money. I had been saving up for a long time to buy her this expensive watch for our anniversary. Instead, I put that money into a photography class, which was something I had stopped being interested in years before. For my photography, I had to be outside on the weekends, hiking to get the best views of scenery at dawn. Going on these trips by myself turned into another way to meditate. As I set up the camera for each shot, I got lost in a state of flow that made me forget about everything else. I started putting my photos online, talking to other photographers, and getting a small group of fans who liked the way I put them together. Every Saturday morning, "Where have you been going so early?" she asked after a few weeks of my new days. "Taking pictures," I replied simply. "Since when are you into photography?" "It's always interested me. I've just not had the time until now to go after it." The look on her face showed that she wanted to ask more but wasn't sure how. Or they might not have wanted to be too interested in my life after I had taken a step back from it. When I got back to work, my renewed focus helped. I went into projects with focus and confidence that I hadn't had during the months of trouble in my marriage. The change was seen by my boss. He told me to keep doing whatever it was I was doing after I presented a new client plan well. "You're really hot these days." It wasn't necessary for the praise to mean so much. After feeling ignored at home for months, getting noticed at work helped fill some of the void. Still not all the way, but enough to keep going. When the third month of my change came around, I saw that I was sleeping better, looking better, and doing better in almost every area of my life. My marriage, on the other hand, stayed a shell of formal encounters and separate lives. I saw the irony. When my wife stopped loving me, she unintentionally pushed me to become a better person. As I was getting ready to leave for a photography meeting one night, she asked me a question I wasn't expecting. "Are you seeing someone else?" I stopped by the door with my camera bag on my back. I told the truth, "So no." "Why do you want to know that?" "You've changed," she said, and I couldn't quite place the note in her voice. "You don't come home very often these days." I almost laughed at how hypocritical her worry was. "I'm just putting my time and energy into things that make me happy," I answered using her own clinical style. "Not long ago, didn't you do that?" That didn't get a reaction from her, so I left before she could. As I drove to meet my new photography friends, I became aware of a basic change. It was the first time since she said she would not change her mind that I wasn't desperately hoping she would. I wasn't focusing on her acceptance or love because I was too busy making my life different. For months after I changed directions, other people could see the changes too. They were clear to everybody. Wednesday morning, my boss called me into his office with news that used to be the best thing about my year. He told her, "We're promoting you to senior manager. Your work over the past few months has been excellent. You're working professionally no matter what you do in your free time." I thanked him genuinely, knowing that my recent success was due to putting all of my energy into work instead of letting a hopeless situation at home drain my energy. The big pay raise that came with the promotion opened up new options for me that I hadn't thought of before. When I told my wife the news that night over dinner, she didn't understand what I meant. She said, "That's great," but then she paused. "Will that mean working even more hours?" "Perhaps." I responded as I looked at her face. "Does it matter?" She moved her food around on the plate. "It does matter, though. We don't see each other very often already." The irony was very funny. "Based on how we agreed, I didn't think that bothered you." She replied, "Our deal doesn't mean I want to live with a stranger." With care, I put my fork down. "That's interesting. Since you changed our marriage without telling me, I've been living with a stranger. That's suddenly a problem now that I'm used to it." She didn't answer, and we were all alone while dinner was over. Later, I put half of my promotion bonus into a joint account so that we could use it for living costs. I then put the other half into a portfolio that my new financial advisor had suggested. My money was now making plans for my future. A future I was picturing more and more without her. The changes in my body also kept going. The gym boss came up to me after a particularly tough workout. "Have you ever thought about competing?" he asked. I thought he was kidding when I laughed, but he was serious. "There will be a fitness race for amateurs soon. Not a big deal, but guys who have only trained half as long as you have are signed up. You train hard and have the body for it." I would have thrown out the idea right away 6 months ago. I then asked for more information and signed up the same day. The competition changed the point of my workouts so they were about more than just getting away from my home life. Alex, my exercise partner, who is divorced, became someone I could talk to about anything. After working out with them for weeks, I finally told them a cleaned-up version of what was going on. "She just chose not to be a part of that part of your marriage, right?" He was shocked and asked. "Almost certainly. You're still there, right?" It was a good question, but I had been putting it off. For some reason, I didn't move and hoped that things would change. But that's quickly going away. Alex turned his head away. Life is too short, man. We had a terrible fight, but at least we both cared enough to fight. Your story isn't about a marriage, it's about a living relationship with extra steps. It was nice that he was honest. A lot of people told me that I could get through hard times, but they didn't understand that my marriage hadn't been going through a hard time. In its core, it had changed into something completely different. My interest in photography grew into something more important. A shop owner in my area saw my work online and asked me to join a group show. It was strange to see my photos made and put up by professionals. They reminded me of how much had changed in just a few months. I asked a few friends to the opening night but purposely didn't tell my wife about it. I was surprised when she showed up because she didn't seem to fit in with the other artists. She told me these were great as she looked at one of my morning paintings. I did not know you were so skilled. I told her, you don't know a lot about me anymore, which wasn't mean. Or maybe they didn't know. A woman from the gallery came up to us. She told my wife, your husband has a beautiful eye. 3 of his pieces have already been sold tonight. My wife's eyes got a little bigger. She managed to say, that's great, but her face showed more confusion than joy. In the end, we took different cars home, and I came straight from work. I thought about how she looked at the gallery. Was she genuinely interested in my new hobby, or was she just shocked that I had built a life outside of her? At home, the way we talked to each other had changed into something like polite distance. As housemates, we got things done by splitting up jobs, working out schedules when needed, and taking care of the things we shared. But the emotional link that makes a marriage work wasn't there anymore, and I wasn't missing it as much. When the exercise competition came around, I was shocked to come in 3rd place in my group. It felt strangely good to stand on that small stage with a medal on my chest. Not because I needed praise from other people, but because it showed how far I'd come from being the sad man who had been speechless in our living room months before. Several women came up to me after the event, and some of them were clearly flirting. Polite, but far away, because I didn't want to make things more difficult for myself. But the way they looked at me made me remember something I almost forgot. Wanted, worthy of love, and able to spark real attention, I was desirable. That night, my wife walked by our bedroom door as I put my award in a drawer. She stood in the hallway and said, "Congratulations. I looked at the shots your friend put online." "Thanks." I replied and shut the drawer. After some thought, she asked, "Are you happy?" With all of these changes, I gave the question a lot of thought. I'm happier now than I was when I was trying to figure out why my wife stopped touching me all of a sudden. In that sense, yes, I'm pretty happy. She flinched a little when I told her the truth. It's not fair. I said that none of this had been fair. But we make do with what we have. You turned away from me. I'm changing my path to become a better person. As she left without saying anything else, I knew we were getting close to a decision point. My refocusing was no longer just a way for me to deal with things. She was going down a completely different road that might eventually take her away from him. It was at a work retreat 6 months after I changed directions that something important happened. My team got together at a lodge by a lake to plan strategies and get to know each other better over the weekend. We unwinded around a fire pit and shared stories and drinks under the stars after a busy day of meetings. Sarah sat down next to me. She had just started working in marketing 3 months before. "You know, when I first started, everyone told me I was lucky to work with you," she said in a low voice that I could only hear. "Really? Why does that happen?" I asked out of real interest. "They said you had totally changed how well the department did its job. They also talked about how much you've changed as a person in the last few months." After some thought, she added. "People said you used to be quiet and almost sad. That's not like the person I know." I looked into the fire and thought about what to do. I had some problems in my personal life and chose to think about the things I could manage instead of the things I couldn't. She gave you a serious nod and said, well, whatever you did worked. You look like you're in your place now. As the night went on, I felt more at ease with you than with anyone else I had talked to in a long time. Sarah was smart and wise, and she had a sharp sense of humor that often made me laugh out loud. Photography and climbing were two things we both liked, and she seemed really impressed when I showed her some of my new work on my phone. She said as she leaned in to look through the gallery, "You have a real talent. These should be made public." The feeling of her warm shoulder against mine jolted me out of the blue and made me realize how long it had been since I'd had even light physical touch with someone. I slowly moved away because I didn't like how I was reacting. Later, when everyone went to their rooms, Sarah walked with me along the path. She said that some of us are going to go on a hike at dawn tomorrow before the talks start. Join. The lighting is just right for those scenery photos you love. I agreed, and the next morning I was standing on top of a hill with Sarah and two other coworkers while the sun painted the sky a beautiful orange and pink. I took a lot of pictures, but my camera kept coming back to Sarah's face against the dramatic background. When I got home from work on Sunday night, my wife was making dinner, which was something she hadn't done for us in months. "How was the retreat?" she asked in a tone that was surprisingly thoughtful. "Productive," I answered as I leaned back in my chair. "We finished the long-term plan for the next 3 months." She said yes and then asked, "I saw some of the pictures you posted, the place is beautiful." I agreed, having some doubts about her new interest. "Is that woman in some of the shots on your team?" The question caught me off guard. I didn't know that Sarah had been in so many of my files. I answered in a neutral way, "That's Sarah, our new marketing specialist." My wife looked at my face and said, "She's very pretty." I told her I hadn't really noticed because I was feeling defensive, but it was clear she didn't believe me. This is what I meant to say next: "You've taken about a dozen pictures of her." As it turned out, she was in the frame when we were doing group exercises. "What do you want to know about this?" She went back to the stove and said, "I'm just interested in your coworkers." But there was something in her tone that made me think she was feeling more, like worry or even jealousy, which didn't make sense for someone who had been trying to keep our feelings separate. Over the next few weeks, our home life changed in small ways. My wife started to ask me more about my day, sometimes cooking for me, and even suggested that we watch a movie together one Friday night. A few months ago, the attention would have made me happy, but now it just makes me feel confused. At the same time, Sarah and I worked together more closely at work as we led a big campaign together. Her creativity went well with my strategy approach, and clients quickly became interested in our project. We often worked late, and as the hours went by, our working relationship turned into friendship as we shared takeout dinners and personal stories during breaks. I was careful to set healthy limits, but I couldn't deny that I liked being with her. The ease with which we talked, the real interest she showed in my ideas and thoughts, and the simple pleasure of being seen and heard by someone who cared about my being there. Sarah looked at me closely one night as we finished work late into the night, long after everyone else had gone home. "Please let me ask you a personal question." It was asked for. I gave him my nod, but I was slightly nervous. "Are you pleased? I mean in your life outside of work." I was surprised by how direct her question was. "That's not simple." I gave an honest answer. She went on, "I've noticed you never talk about your home life. You talk about your photography, your workouts, and your investments, but you never talk about your personal ties." After some thought, I chose a partial truth. Recently, my marriage has been hard. We're pretty much living different lives even though we live in the same house. What I liked about Sarah's face was that it showed real worry without pity. She just said, "I'm sorry. You should get better." I was shocked by how hard those 4 words hit me. You should get better. Marriage isn't hard. Have you also tried therapy? Just a simple admission that what I told you was not good enough for someone she cared about. Her words kept playing over and over in my head as I drove home. Did I deserve a better life? I had spent so much time trying to figure out why my wife was pulling away and then getting used to it that I had never really thought about whether I should accept it or not. My wife was waiting for me when I got home, which she hadn't done in a long time. "You stay late at work a lot," she said something as I put my keys down. I told them about the big effort. "Things are going well." "With Sarah?" she asked in a neutral voice. I gave her a direct look. "Sarah is in charge of the artistic work. Why do you want to know about her so much?" After a moment of thought, my wife said what I think had been on her mind for weeks. "She looks at you the way I used to look at you, and you look happier with her than you have in months around here." The statement stuck out between us. It wasn't an accusation or a confession, it was a more complex recognition of a changing reality that we hadn't named yet. After a long pause, I said, "Let's talk. Talk deeply, not just about the bare facts like we've been doing for months." My wife slowly nodded, and we went to the living room, which was where she had told me that our relationship was over. It seemed like a long time ago. We sat across from each other, faces away. We only talked about our food lists and mortgage payments. "Are you seeing someone else?" she asked straight out, and her voice was calm but stressed. "No," I told the truth. "I have never broken our marriage vows." She said, "But you're thinking about it." I considered avoiding the truth, but I picked it instead. "A lot of things are on my mind. About what it means to be married when one person changes the rules on their own. About whether being friends for life is enough or if closeness and emotional link are more important. About whether I'm really living or just going through the motions." She looked at her hands. "So you're punishing me by changing everything about your life and chatting with someone at work?" I felt something, not anger, when I heard the charge. "Don't think this is about discipline. It was never there. The goal is to stay alive. You didn't just say no to physical contact when you told me not tonight or any night. You turned down my offer of being your partner because I wasn't good enough for you." She said, "That's not fair. I cared about you all the time." "That's not the same as love," I said. "You chose to keep the parts of our marriage that made you feel good and get rid of the rest." And for months, I tried to understand, adjust, and find a way to move forward that respected your choice while keeping my sanity. I took a moment to collect my thoughts. It wasn't my goal to make you jealous or attract other people when I changed. It was about taking back parts of myself that I had ignored and that were dying in the light of your rejection. She kept quiet for a while. She finally said, "I didn't think it would affect you this much. I thought everything else could go on as usual." I was shocked by how casually cruel the statement was. "What makes you think that's true? You can't pick and choose which parts of a marriage to keep and throw away the rest." "People change," she said in a defensive way. "How you feel changes. Instead of lying to you, I told you the truth. You were honest, yes. Now I'm telling the truth. The man who was sitting here in shock after hearing what you said months ago is no longer here. The changes I've made aren't just short-term fixes for a problem. They make me who I am now. Someone with enough self-worth not to take small amounts of love." A tear ran down her cheek. It was the first real feeling I had seen in a long time from her. "You're leaving me for her, right?" I turned my head away. "It's not about Sarah or anyone else. It's about us. About what's wrong with our relationship and whether it's worth fixing." She asked, "Is it?" in a voice that was hard to hear. The question needed to be thought about carefully. In spite of everything, we had made memories and goals together and built a life together. It wouldn't be easy or comfortable to leave. I honestly said, "I don't know. I know this, though. I'm not going back to how things were. I'm not going to lie and say that your decision to make your own changes didn't have a big effect on our relationship. And I won't say sorry for getting stronger in reaction. She wiped her tears away and calmed down. What will happen next? Now we make decisions based on facts, not on memories or what's easiest. You chose to focus your feelings on something other than our marriage. You were right. Moving my time, attention, and resources toward personal growth was the choice I made. That was my right. Before going on, I took a deep breath. And now it's up to both of us to decide if there's still something good between us or if we're no longer fit. She asked, "Do you want to try?" with a note of hope in her voice that pleased me. After that, we need to know that we can't go backward. Things can't go back to how they were before you made your statement. And we can't keep up this half-marriage we've been living. It has to be something new that takes into account and values who we've both become if we want to move forward together. She gave a slow nod. If I can't give you what you want. The question made her be honest, maybe the most honest she had been in months. And it deserved an answer that was just as honest. We hope that we say goodbye with love and respect for what we meant to each other in the past. That night, we talked for hours, working through layers of anger and misunderstanding. She admitted that her problems with how she saw herself had made her shrink. I told her how badly her rejection had hurt my sense of how valuable and desirable I was. There were no easy answers or dramatic peace talks. Just two people who finally saw how far apart they were and wondered if they could get along. As dawn came up, we made a choice that hurt and had to be made. A separation test. Not as a step toward divorce, but to give each of us time to think about what we really wanted before choosing what we could give each other. The next weekend, I moved into an apartment that was already set up. Setting up my new place made me feel surprisingly free. Setting things up the way I want them is all I care about. It meant making a space that showed the person I had become instead of the relationship I had lost. After 2 weeks of being apart, my wife texted me to ask if we could meet for coffee. We picked a place that wasn't either our house or my new flat, a quiet cafe in the middle. She looked a little different, not drastically different like I did when I changed, but more present and interested in what she was doing. After awkwardly meeting each other, she said, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said about changing our marriage on your own." I gave her a nod and waited for her to go on. She said, "You were right. I chose something that would affect both of us, but I didn't really think about how it would affect you. That wasn't polite or fair." That being said meant something, but maybe not as much as it would have months earlier. "Thank you for noticing that," was my simple answer. She went on, "I also realized something else. Seeing how you changed into a new person who was sure of themselves, focused, and doing well made me realize how stuck I was in our relationship and in my life in general." She held her coffee mug in both hands. "I was really angry at them. Not of Sarah or anyone else, but of how you've changed. It was you who found passion and meaning, while I was just existing." Her honesty put me at ease. "What does that mean for us?" She looked straight into my eyes. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to treatment and trying to find my own ways to move forward. That change made me want to let you know that I appreciated it, whether it brings us back together or different ways." After an hour of the most honest conversation we'd had in over a year, we parted ways. That's when I understood that my change had come full circle. What started out as a desperate attempt to deal with being emotionally abandoned turned into a real journey of self-discovery that would continue no matter what happened with my marriage. As I walked back to my car, I didn't feel victorious or beaten. Instead, I felt something more valuable, at peace with the person I had become through hardship. No matter what happened next, I would face it not as someone who was looking for connection or support from other people, but as someone who had found his own worth again. Our story is over. Do you want to join our group if you've made it this far? It really helps us a lot. I chose one more video for you that I think you'll enjoy. You are welcome to click on them. I look forward to seeing you in the next story. Have a nice day.